Good morning and welcome to the Fusionary Health podcast. I'm Dr. Shivani Gupta, and this is the podcast dedicating to recalibrating your health every day. My goal is to help you wake up each day energized by addressing root causes and giving you new approaches to preventive health. The more we know about integrative health, the more empowered we are in building the vibrant health we want. Welcome everyone to the Fusionary Health podcast. I have a special guest in store for you today, Lauren Donahue, who has her own beautiful retreat company, leading people all around the world to have powerful healing and healthy experiences. So welcome, Lauren.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited for this conversation.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So as we kick off, first share what you do, because I feel like right at the top, we should be like, this is what you can expect that we're going to be diving into today. So share that first.
I actually love this question because for so long, I felt like I didn't have a purpose. I didn't know like why I'm here. I'm not a professional athlete or professional musician. I just was forgot about. And so through some deep work, I realized that my why and my purpose, or my raison d'etre, as my grandpa used to say, which means reason for being, is to facilitate relationships so that we can live in a more connected world. So really everything I do is bringing people together so we can be more connected. So right now, what that looks like is creating safe spaces for people to come where they know they belong and where they can expand and grow together. And we do that through wellness retreats all over the world.
That's awesome. I love that. And so what led you to creating these retreats? Because I know we're going to dive into the one you have coming up, which personally I think is so cool. The thing that you've created that is your this year retreat. But before we go into that, what kind of is your story that led you into this work that you do now?
Yeah, that's also such a great question that I love. And really how I started doing retreats was I was the friend that always planned the vacations for my friends. And I took it to a whole nother level where we had itineraries, there were games. We had so many fun things we were doing. I even would burn CDs back when that was a thing with everyone's power song. So while they were driving to the retreat, or I guess back then it was just the vacation that we were having, they would listen to everyone's power songs and get pumped up. And we did goodie bags and prizes and team colors. And it was just so cool. And my friends were like, when are you going to do this for like your life's work and get paid for it? And I was like, you mean people would pay me for this to do what I would do for free? Which I think is a really cool thing for people that are listening. What is the thing that lights you up, that wakes you up in the morning that you could do every day for free? And maybe choose to do that to get paid for it. So that's really how I started hosting retreats, is I was already kind of doing it.
That's awesome. I have two things to say to that. One, yes, we should all figure out what we really love to do and how that could be our career. I actually have a little closet hobby called throwing parties. And I love executing a party. Ever since my kids were little, I used to take like 6 months to unfold with like a theme, like carousel theme and things like that. And I'd craft it and put it together. I have since stopped because I got so involved with my business and work. But come Christmas and Diwali, every year I like lovingly pull everything out, and on the weekends and the evenings I get to like curate this experience.
Yes.
That is this moment of hope and joy for everyone in my family. So I completely get you that you can eventually one day, like right now my kids are little, I don't want to be a party planner who does things nights and weekends, but like you could take your hobbies into your work, which is so cool.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's like you have it within you, right? The thing that totally lights you up. And then it's like seeing other people. It was really not about like what I was creating or curating. It was once I was there in the space with people and they were having conversations and connecting. And then all of a sudden they're getting engaged or they're starting a business together. They become best friends. I'm like, this is why I'm doing it, because you're just creating the space for transformation, for anything to happen. But if you don't create the space, you don't set it up, you don't plan it, it's not going to happen.
For sure. That intersection of people will never happen.
Right.
And I know another person who's a little like you in that way. My sister, when she gathers people together, she has that creative energy. I remember we were hosting a bridal shower for our younger cousin, and she was like the T-shirts and the napkins and the thing, like the goodie bags and the gifting. And I was like, how did you put this together? And we still all have those shirts and wear those shirts, and like that memorable and fun the way she designed it. And I think that's an art. Not everyone has that ability to kind of see a theme, execute it all together, and create so much magic in those events.
Yeah. And I think when you just said that, it made me think of core memories, right? Like you could be a part of people's core memories. And when you started to talk about the T-shirts, it took me back to Stagecoach like 15 years ago, which is the last one I did before I started doing it for my life's work. And we had trucker hats, and we had like a time where we all made things like based on the singer and, you know, the song and things. So we all made these hats. 15 years later, people still wear these hats that we made, you know, like that long ago. And it's a core memory for people. And it was overalls and trucker hats that day. And so that was the theme. And then we had like a camo day theme and a USA theme. But it's like people will remember those moments and they'll talk about it the rest of their lives.
True. And let's talk about what a core memory is. Like maybe people haven't heard that phrase before. Will you share what that means?
Yeah, you know, I want to remember the movie where it talks about this, and I'll have to send it to you after. Maybe you can put it in the show notes because it's not going to come to me right now, but it's an amazing movie, which really will like showcase core memories and things like that and where they're stored in the brain and all of that. But really, a core memory is something that locks in. And this could be a positive or maybe a negative, right? Trauma can happen and that can get stored and locked in there. But a core memory could be like on a vacation, you're sitting on a chair in a hammock and you're reading a book and you just like look up at the sky and it's the most beautiful moment. It brings you to tears and you're like, wow, like lock this in, right? Or a conversation that we're having right now, something could happen in this conversation today that becomes a core memory. So it's really something that's right there, easily accessible that you go back to. And it could move you to tears. It could be emotional. It also could be a traumatic core memory, right? And something that you get to process and maybe release the negative emotion attached to that. So you just see it as an event and not actually something negative. But that's kind of like my way of describing core memories. I'm sure there's a much better way to describe that. And maybe you have a way to describe it.
No, that was great. You know, I think of Tony Robbins. Like every time I've been to UPW to his events, he does this thing where he makes you go back and remember, like, what are the most high moments, like those high point memories that you have in your mind of your life. And usually it's something that scared the absolute crap out of you, or it was something horrible, or it was like this just peak moment like you're talking about. And so I remembered things like race car driving, jumping out of a plane. And then his point is, we're all trying to just live this consistent, normal life. He was like, boring life. When in fact, those moments that happened were when we were being truly adventurous or unbridled. And so how can we bring more of that into our lives? And I think that ties so beautifully to what you do, because you help people leave where they are, like leave your home base, your space that you're in every single day. And if you think about it, even Joe Dispenza talks about how like we have these patterns and we just keep doing the same pattern. We keep weaving the same like groove in the sidewalk every day of our lives. And it's only when we totally check out that we build that neuroplasticity, those new memories and those new really thoughts and ideas. Sometimes you have to leave to have that creative flow you want. So will you share a little bit about your retreat business and kind of some of the things that you've seen happen on retreats for people that have been transformational? Because I find that, like, for me, as a mom, as an entrepreneur, with the responsibilities I have, a lot of my friends host retreats, and I'm always like, one day I will go to Bali. One day I will go to Thailand. One day.
Right.
But if we don't make the time, like, when does one day come?
Never.
Yeah.
That's
the thing.
Yeah. I actually just watched a Netflix series called One Day, and it's really about that same concept of sometimes you just wait too long and it doesn't get to work out the way you wanted. But I will say, to answer your question, when we first started doing the retreats, they were called Unplugged. So it was really about disconnecting to reconnect back to your true self, disconnecting and ditching the technology and devices and really plugging into yourself and your purpose. And at the time, I thought that was the only way we could do it, is to silence the noise, change our environment, get out of the normal routine and then patterns and things like that, and go
Sure.
somewhere away. And so I was choosing national parks, and we did Zion and Big Sur and Yosemite and things like that, where honestly, there was no cell service. So I didn't even have to take people's phones away, really, even though we really suggested that they keep them away the whole time. But it was to come and to unplug and to not be so connected with the world and everybody that's always needing something from you, and really get to be poured into. So we have breath work and meditation and lots of time in nature and hiking and jumping in the cold rivers and doing the natural cold plunges, and then having time in community and nourishing our bodies. We would have a private chef that comes and actually curates each meal based on the activity that's happening after, whether we're going to be sitting in a meditation or we're going to be out hiking. And then when we come back, how are we going to refuel our body that way? So very intentional menus and food going into the body, but then the conversations. And I think at the end of the day, what is the most transformational about retreats and getting away and just dropping in with people, the real human connection, are the conversations. Like, true. I really believe one day I will start a podcast. I've said this for like 10 years, but what I always say is we're only one conversation away from a completely different life. And I really, really believe that. Like, whether it's the person they room with, they ride in the car with, they ride to the hike with, they sit next to at dinner, in a workshop, their life will be forever changed by the person or the people that they meet in these spaces.
It's true. It's true. And I've always known that, but I think until it happens to you like lightning, sometimes you don't recognize it. Like, we met at a conference last year in Arizona called CHS. And I'll never forget, I was sitting there and I was so excited to be in a room of like founders of health and wellness companies. And I was like, I'm with my peers, and yet I'm also with people who are lightning years ahead of me. And so I was sitting there at dinner the first night, and they were serving us the best gluten-free bread of my whole entire life. By the way,
I had a lot of that. I had a lot of that. Yeah.
Me and the gluten-free girl next to me were just like, "What's happening? We're going to eat our weight in bread right now."
And it's fine because it was hot there. So we just sweat it right out.
It was so good. But I sat next to dinner next to a founder of a supplement company who had this exact track record I hoped for one day in life. And then the next day I met another, and the conversations were like, are you kidding? You are inevitably going to win. Why are you worrying about this? Like, let's go. And to have these amazing humans, these men, step into my life and be mentors to me has like moved my life at exponential rates in 1 year. Yeah. And given me so much hope and so much peace and so much like, all right, like it's inevitable. What you're doing is inevitable because of your intention and how you're doing it. And so you're right, that intersection, like we're just one beautiful connection away from our best friend or our next mentor, our next guide, our next person to hold our hand on this journey.
Yeah. And I feel like what really in that moment you did was borrow their belief. And I think that that's so important that we just borrow the belief of the person. Like, I did that. My grandfather believed in me far before I ever believed in myself. And so I just borrowed his belief. And then eventually I started to believe what he was saying about me. And I feel like when you have people to speak life into you like that, whether it's a family member like it was for me, or a mentor, or a stranger. You know, I went and I met someone today that I've only met one other time speaking on a panel together, and she's starting a business, and I've been there exactly where she's been. And I was just speaking life into her, and I'm like, I'm on your team. I'm supporting you. You got this. I believe. And she really almost, had tears, and I did too. Cause I'm like, I feel exactly what you're feeling right now. And you need to know you have people on your team and in your corner.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's so beautiful if someone helps curate that for you. That's what I realized at that event was this is someone who's bringing together great people. So all you're going to find there are great people who are in the similar vibration, who have a similar understanding, who have a similar belief. Like, we all showed up as people who know that we're meant to change the world in health and wellness. So that made it easier to have those conversations, because you're like, oh, I'm in a safe space. I can trust. And so when it comes to retreats, will you share this retreat you're doing coming up? I heard about this journey and path you're talking about because of Rachel Hollis, who I follow online, and I love her content. Yes. And I think a lot of what she teaches is just fantastic, and I've been to her conferences. But will you share the location and the details of this epic idea that you have and what your intention is for the people on this retreat?
Yes, I am so excited about this one, particularly because I feel like the Camino de Santiago actually called me. It woke me up at 3 o'clock in the morning and I couldn't go back to sleep. And I opened this book of prayers that I've had for years that I've never opened and just started reading. And it was a woman talking about losing her mom and not knowing what to do and going through so much grief. And she found out about the Camino and decided to go walk the Camino solo by herself and really walk through that grief and go through that healing journey. And in that very moment, I thought, I'm going to go walk the Camino. And whenever I have something that I think is going to benefit or value me, or I just immediately want to share it. So like already I'm like, I haven't even done this yet, but I want to bring people with us and I want to do this. So I reached out to my friend who has done the Camino a couple of times. One, she took a group and another time she went with her mom. And I said, I really believe we're supposed to take people to the Camino. It's calling. We should answer the call. And I started watching movies, reading books, doing all the research. And that's really how it was born that we're doing this trip. And I'm so excited because every person that's walking the way with us, and they call it the way, is walking for a different reason. And some people are walking for other people. Some people are walking for themselves. Some people, it's a physical endurance, right? There's a spiritual component. It's a pilgrimage. There's a cultural immersion aspect. So there's all these different reasons. And for me personally, I'm still walking through some grief of losing my grandfather, stepfather, and mentor all within 7 months. Wow. And so I'm taking their ashes and I'm taking pictures. There's a grief tower. So whatever the reason is that people are coming, I know it's personal, but also it's collective because we really are all experiencing similar things and we're not alone. And I think that's really important for people to know that we're there to walk with them hand in hand.
Sure. Yeah. Will you share where it is and how long it is and how you're doing the pieces?
Yes, exactly. So it's in Spain. So the Camino de Santiago has 9 different routes and France, Germany, Spain. You can leave from any of those locations. Okay. The full Camino is 800 kilometers, so 500 miles. Okay. So people typically take 4 to 6 weeks to do that. But since this is a retreat and we want it to be accessible for more people, it's going to be about 7 days total, 5 days walking. So we leave on May 29th. Or actually, we arrive May 29th. We leave to walk on the 30th, and then we complete on the 3rd. And so people leave. So each day we walk about 8 to 12 miles. So we stay in different locations. It's a coastal route in the beginning. So we'll get to be along the ocean, the beach. It's going to be really beautiful. And then as you go along, you have a Camino passport. So you get stamps for your passport. And then as long as you complete the last 100 kilometers, which is what we're doing for the retreat, you get your certificate of completion for the Camino.
Nice. So what is the meaning of this Camino? Is it like a from a certain religion? Is it like, what is its meaning to people?
Originally, and I think it's St. Thomas, but there were some remains that were found at where the cathedral is, basically once you reach the end there. And so people from all over the world, basically they called them pilgrims, were coming. We're walking these 500 miles to come and basically worship and be there over the place where they found the remains. So it was a very spiritual, or I guess you could call it religious experience for people at that time. Sure. But now it's just become something that's universal. And again, a lot of it is grief. People are walking, or they want to walk with their mother or their father or somebody really special to them and just go on this journey. And some people are looking to rewrite their story and looking to find their purpose or their next chapter in their life. Maybe they have completed something. They're ready for something new. So this is the in between for them to really see what comes up, because in that space, right, where you are walking, you're in movement, you're moving forward every single day. A lot's going to come up. And when it comes up, it's ready to come out. And so that's what's really exciting too, is what is that? Why is the Camino calling? What's going to come up for you? And what decisions are you going to make after this, right? For Jess, who's my partner in this, she walked the Camino and she lived in LA at the time and heard you can move here. And now she lives in Spain, in Barcelona. And that happened while she was walking the Camino. So people make some pretty big life decisions after they take that walk as well, because really it's like you're getting quiet, you're getting still. There's a lot of like meditation happening even in the movement. and you get really clear on a lot of the questions that maybe you're asking that the noise of the world is drowning out the answer from. And so you get out there and you have space.
Sure. And I can imagine that if because this is a pilgrimage point where over thousands of years, people have moved along this path towards this place to pray or release or grieve energetically, there's this beauty to this journey. And that's really cool because I find that, again, so many of us get busy in our normal lives. Yeah. So to take the time to go leave, to go process something can be so powerfully healing. Because if you don't leave to process, I'm not saying we all have to leave to process, but if you can leave to process, it kind of gives you that space for, like you said, everything to come up. And we know in health and wellness, if we're going to carry around all our baggage, that's not healthy. And so the more we can create these experiences or these opportunities for people to just go, put it all out there, heal, release, then you come back kind of clean and clear and ready, like you said, for the next chapter.
Yeah. And I think the piece for me, at least, and from people that I talk to about these kind of experiences, it accelerates the healing or the growth or the expansion. Whereas I believe we're all eventually going to get there. Whatever the destination is that we're headed toward, we will get there. But the reason I hire coaches and mentors and go to masterminds and go to events like where I met you is it accelerates my expansion and my growth. And I'm that type of person where I'm like, let's go, quantum leap. I'm ready for it, right? Put me in, coach. So I think that that's the beautiful thing is it just accelerates and gets us to that destination that we're looking for faster.
Absolutely. I love that because you're right. Yes, we will get there eventually, but if we can accelerate it, then it's that much easier on us.
Yeah. It's like, do I want to be in it for 10 years processing this? Or do I want it to be like a year or, some things that are not as big, right? It's like something that might've taken me 6 months could take me literally 6 minutes, right? Yeah. Like if I'm doing the work, it can be so much faster than sitting in it and being in it for so long. Cause I think it's important to feel it, right? That's how we heal. But some of those things with the awareness and the tools, I can really process through them quickly.
True. Yeah. I mean, my family and I just went to Haridwar, India, and we went as all of us. And it was a healing trip. The whole point was to heal from something that we were all grieving together. And to land in Haridwar, to see the Ganges, to put our feet in the Ganga River. I say Ganges when I'm in the US and it is the Ganga River. But just to go and be able to release and do all these little ceremonies and things like giving flowers and pray, it just... I feel like we wiped the slate clean in a way that had not happened for us before that. And so I felt it in that moment. Everyone was lighter. Everyone had kind of let go what they were holding on to so tightly. And so now I feel like the family feels energetically better, which is huge because it's not easy to get through big things like that.
No, and I think it's really beautiful that you did it together. And I think that's like, when we do retreats and things, we're together and it's really beautiful. And when you just mentioned that, I thought about with my grandfather, how I was sitting in it for so long, but I wasn't moving. I wasn't changing my environment. I wasn't going places. And a few months ago, I went back to the place called Cowtown, where he used to be Lucky Luke, the drugstore cowboy. And he would play harmonica and guitar and entertain people. And I hadn't been back there. And I went back with my family and we went into the drugstore and we walked the streets and we saw the window that he used to sit in. And there's a picture of him in there. And it was so healing to go back there and be in the space, the energetic space that he was in. You could feel him, right? And it was just like, wow, that really helped process and heal. So sometimes it's even going back to the spaces and places where you once were with the people who have changed form is what I say now, right? Because I'm looking at a picture to my right of my grandpa in physical form. And then right to the left of that is his ashes. Now he's not gone. He just changed form. He looked like that. And now he looks like that.
Right. Right. And so will you speak a little bit about this grief tower and how people who are grieving are able to find some healing on this journey with you?
Yeah. And I think it's part of what you said, right? Like so many people have walked the way and it's like every step is a story and so many people have shared. And I think in life, really what's healing is when you're not alone, right? I just went through a pretty big grief journey and I was losing my hair and having all sorts of different things. And when I started sharing that with people, because at first I was kind of embarrassed. I was just like, oh my gosh. But when I started sharing and I heard other people's stories and they were similar, the moment I felt like I wasn't alone, I felt better.
Yeah.
And so I think with this grief tower, when you go there and you have some perspective, because you see all the other photos of the people who have changed form, you think about all of their families and kind of this web of just how many people they impacted and touched and that ripple effect. And it's like, oh my gosh, I'm not alone. All of these people have felt something similar to me. And they all walked this way and they've all been here. And there's ashes here, there's ancestors, there's all these things. And I feel like that in general of I'm not alone. I see that there's other people that have experienced what I'm experiencing currently. And in that, there's just like in that exact moment, there's healing, there's processing, there's things that are happening. So obviously I haven't been there to the tower yet, but watching the stories and reading about the stories, I can get a sense of what that's going to feel like.
Sure. And do you feel like as the coach, mentor, guide, you're going to be able to make the space to have your healing?
Yeah, I think that's what's so beautiful. And in the past, and actually just prior to my grandfather passing, I've hosted so many retreats and shown up. And no matter what I was going through, it was like, once I walked through that door and I was on stage, I was there for them holding space and I would show no emotion. It was just like, nope, I'm here. I'm the leader. This is what I need to do. What it taught me when my grandpa passed, because I had a retreat 1 week later and I was destroyed. Yeah. And during the breath work and meditation that I had other people leading, I was crying so hard, almost like couldn't catch my breath. Yeah. And I almost left the room. And then you know what? I stayed in the room and I let people see me like that. And so many people came up to me after and were like, thank you for being a leader, but showing us that like you're going through something and that we now have permission to be able to do that. We don't always have to have it all together and put together and look like we've got everything figured out when we don't. And so that was liberating for me because it was like a moment where I thought, even as a leader, I can show up like this and that's leading because that's what's really true for me. And that's what's up right now. Sure. And so I think to be able, ever since then, I've been able to be really vulnerable with wherever I'm at that time and still be able to hold space and have a powerful presence. But everyone that's coming on this trip knows because I've had conversations with every single person that's coming. We have a application and an interview process because we also really take it seriously who's in the group and that sacredness and safeness of that. And so I know why they're walking and they know why I'm walking and everyone's in full support.
I think it's so important. I love that you shared that. Like that question came into my mind and I was like, why are you asking that question? But sometimes my intuition has questions I want to ask. Like I want to know how you as the host can truly make the space for yourself. But you're right. It's by being your authentic self and showing, hey, I am a royal mess in this moment because I've got stuff to heal through that everyone else in your retreat can say, you know what? I can really let go. If she can, I can. If she can release, I can release. I don't have to hold back the way so many of us hold back a lot of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And that retreat was the most vulnerable I've ever seen the guests. So I was like, oh my gosh, you really are, as a leader, the one who opens that door for people to be authentically themselves and to bring whatever's there. The whole point of these spaces is for people to bring up and out what it is that they're working on. So if they're suppressing or repressing or not really fully sharing, they can't be fully known or fully loved. Like there's that 2%. It's like we share 98%, which feels like a lot. I'm sharing so much, but the 2% carries the most weight. And that's the 2% that helps people fully know and love you and be there for you. And what was cool in that moment too, is as a leader, I got to ask for support and I had other people come in to lead the things that I wouldn't be able to lead in that moment. And that was very powerful for me because I'm someone who can figure it out on my own. I'm independent. I don't need help. I can't ask for help, all these things. Yeah. And I'm like, wow, people can show up for you. And so the guests too were like, I have an issue asking for help. Like I need to ask people for this support. And so they went out and like, we had them check in and stuff. They're like, the most powerful thing has actually been asking for support and receiving it.
Wow.
So it's like go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say, when we release and surrender to whatever's meant to be like in this space or at this retreat, whatever the theme is, like we think we know going into it and we have this itinerary, but when we leave room for that flow, the actual reason why everybody's there, because right time, right place, right people. It'll never be that same set and setting ever again in history, right? With this group. So there's a reason, and we think we know it, and then it reveals itself. And in that moment, I knew why they were all there, why I didn't cancel the retreat, you know, because I could have just been like, I cannot do this. Absolutely cannot. But I did it anyways. And so I was like, this is what was meant to come through. This is the message. This is what they all needed. And this is going to change their life. And that was the transformation.
That's amazing. It's amazing because it's easy to cancel. It's easy to say, hey, I'm a mess. I can't do this. I'm not ready. But just to show up sometimes and have that faith that like the thing that's meant to happen for everyone is still going to happen. It can all come together. I think it just takes a maturity. It takes an understanding. It takes having the experience to know like, okay, like we can still do this. One thing you said that really struck me was 98 and 2. So I agree with you because I actually share 98% of, I wouldn't say 98%. I'm a little private and reserved. So I would say I share about 90% of my life, and I really hold a 10% really close. And when we spoke on our call before the podcast, I shared with you whatever happened to me in August, which I don't share all the details because it's a family matter. My hair fell out from August through the fall. And I was like, what is happening here? This is bad. But when we go through serious things, the body takes such a toll. You take such a hit physically. And as it was happening, I was like, oh, please honor that Ayurvedic self-care and everything you teach, you need it times 5 right now, because this is just one sign. This is one symptom of the level of stress you're processing. And so when you've done these retreats, have you found like people who come in, I've seen this, like people come into a retreat and everything's kind of different. Like sometimes people haven't done breath work. They haven't done these things, but then they come out and they're like the biggest super fan of the new modality that you exposed them to, because it was just that right thing that they needed to start processing.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, kind of what I was just talking about. I don't believe in accidents, right? So whatever it is, I believe it finds them at the right time. And I think it's always so cool. That's why I love talking to people when they're signing up for the retreats. I'm like, how did this come about? And it was like, I saw something in a magazine and somebody mentioned it. And then it was like, oh my gosh, of course. And it's like in your reticular activating system now. And it's meant to be. So I really feel like right time, right place, you're going to end up where you need to be for your biggest evolution and growth. So whether that's in Big Sur, whether that's in Spain on the Camino, wherever that is, when you go there and you are open and you are curious, maybe it's the breath work. Maybe it's the journaling. A lot of times we give everyone a journal that comes, and that journal that takes them 5 minutes every single morning and every single evening, they call it the magic journal. Everything they write in there comes true. And really what that is they're being intentional. They're writing it down. It's the same thing with the vision board. I'm like, the reason these things come true is you have it right there and you're looking at it every day. So then when it comes to, I'm going to book a vacation. Oh, I'm going to do Paris. Oh, so interesting, because that's on my vision board. Yeah, you see it. So it's in there. It's like, oh, the car, right? You see it. Well, of course, that's the one you're going to pick when you go.
Correct.
So I just think it's so interesting. Like whatever it is that we're looking for, and we declare it and we speak it and we tell somebody, then they're going to maybe say, hey, you should go to this retreat. Hey, you should go to this conference. Hey, you should get this journal. Right. And so, yes, I think that there's always something, whether it's the journal, whether it's like, oh my gosh, I love moving for 20 minutes every day and walking in silence without my headphones and not listening to a podcast or a book or anything, but like just being with myself. Or we've had people that used to order food out all the time, and then they have a chef that prepares their meals. And then our chef gives them all the recipes and how to make the same food. And they go home and they keep making the same food and they lose 20, 30 pounds. Wow. And they had no idea. They didn't come for that at all. They came because they were excited about yoga and hiking. But then they figured out a new way of being and a new lifestyle that they dropped into for 5 days. And they wanted to continue that. So it's like what they thought they came for is not what they actually needed. And what they needed was this meal plan and new way of life. And then they went and they lost this weight and then got their first date in 5 years. And right, like all these cool things can just transpire from that one decision to say yes, whether you know why you're doing it or not. You're just intuitively know this is where I'm supposed to be.
It's so true. I find that with events, like a lot of times I'm in South Florida and there's so much here. There's like so many cool events, so many things. And when I say yes, like a lot of things are maybe, when it's a maybe, I write it down and I tell people I am a maybe. If the stars align, I will be there.
Yeah.
And when I say yes, if it's a full yes, and then life starts trying to throw things in my way, I'm like, no, no, no. I'm not backing out of the commitment because something is meant for me there.
Yes.
And every time I push past I'm tired, I don't want to go, I'm hungry, the kids, any excuse I can think of, the minute I push past it and I just go, I never regret it. Like some magic is there waiting for me because my intuition knew I was supposed to be in that place. So I feel like when we say yes, just committing to our commitments, like sticking to our commitments and showing up is that opportunity for the universe to then show up and say, you know what? That magic was here for you. Thank you for saying yes. Like you knew it, your body knew it, your being knew it, and you just had to make sure you stay out of the way and show up for it.
Right. And I think what's really cool too is going in so open that it might not happen in that moment at that dinner or at that retreat or at that conference, but a year later, someone can reach out and say, hey, let's have a conversation. And who knows who's listening and what that leads to, right? So you don't know how soon it's going to happen. But when you commit to something and you show up, you definitely are speaking out to the ethers and saying, hey, I'm serious about this. I'm planting seeds. I don't know if this is one of those plants that grows really fast or really slow, or it's like doing its thing underground and all of a sudden it sprouts and things are going wild. But yeah, I think it's just when we commit and we show up, magic will happen on some timeline that we don't know about.
True. It's so true. And having that faith and that optimism, I think is so important to know that everything you do is, if it's with intention and good intention, it's going to lead to great things. So just do it and leave that intention right there for it to magically unfold. Yeah.
And I think what's cool is like ROI, a lot of times people invest in a workshop or a coaching program or retreat or conference, and they're looking for a specific, if I paid $5, I want $5 back. If I paid 5,000, I want 5,000 back and then some, right? And so I think we're looking at it that way. Whereas my intention going into anywhere where I show up and there's people, so workshop, retreat, conference, anything, my intention is to find my person. So that is one person at least who I connect deeply with, have a conversation with, who maybe we will go start a business, or maybe we'll host something together, or maybe they'll be at my wedding, or who knows. But when I find my person, the return on investment it's priceless, right? Yeah. So that's what I'm always looking for, is who can I connect with and who can say something to me, that an idea that I never thought of, or I'm going through something and exactly what they said is what I need to hear in that moment. There's my ROI. I got it. That's my intention. So I got the value that I came for.
Sure. And I think so many times we think of it so like monetarily and so A for A or apples to apples. Like in our case, I have a supplement company. We do trade shows. When we do a trade show, it's either a win or a lose. Like we're not thinking about it. And we have to remind ourselves, calculate over a year. If we picked up 20 amazing doctors, that's a 1-year relationship plus. But like remember the long-term benefits. And sometimes I laugh because we go to a show and I usually meet one magical person. And that one magical person changes my life, changes our trajectory. So you can't calculate it so tightly and say, oh, it was worth it or it wasn't worth it. Because inevitably the universe puts one magical person in your life who you get to then interact with.
Absolutely. So that's the thing to stay open and curious about, is who's your person? And if I'm at an event and I haven't found my person yet, I don't leave. Like I start going around and I'm like, you might be my person. Like, yeah.
Well, my next question that I was thinking about is, how are you incorporating writing into this? Because you mentioned when we spoke that this is a way to write new chapters. This is an opportunity to write your next book, to get clear on it. So will you share that aspect? Because I think that's really unique. Like speaking of ROI, what a beautiful thing to come out of a retreat with is that clarity.
Yeah. And so we wanted the tagline for the retreat is walk your way home and rewrite your story. So we're kind of walking our way back home to our soul, like our soul's purpose and who we know that we are, remembering who we are if we have maybe lost touch with that or have been dealing with grief, loss, things like that. And so really, like we were saying, every step is a story. And so we have prompts, journal prompts, and ways for people by the end to be able to have their story. And whether they want to go on a podcast tour or speaking engagements, they have their story and it's written and it's their story and it's their way to, because our stories are really share who we are and how we show up in this world. So that is an aspect that we're really excited about for people, that it is a retreat. We are doing meditation and breath work and walking and all of those things and connecting, but we want there to be this aspect too, where in those moments of stillness and quiet, and maybe you're in the hot springs or maybe you're back at your room or something like that, to open up and answer those questions. So at the end, you have that to share.
Nice. And when you said loss, I thought it's not just loss. Sometimes it's divorce. Sometimes it's career change. Anything big in your life could be a moment of transition. And those transition points, which we all have, my kids are getting older. I'm like, oh my God, I'm in the last phase of cuddles. Like that's something to grieve, or kids going away to college. Like all these things are transition points. So I love that you're creating this retreat that's about walking back home to yourself.
Yes.
Because again, we don't oftentimes make the space, and maybe it's a me problem, but I feel like in my house, I'm always worried about, oh my gosh, like the dishes and the laundry and this broke and the car. And there's always like the physical material things we're managing, that plane. Then we've got our family, whatever that is, spouse, partner, kids. So you're managing the emotional plane, then the mental, all the things we have to manage in our lives. And so even last week was spring break for my kiddos. And I took them to Houston, where I'm from, and I handed them to my mom and sister. And I was like, guys, I need to lock myself away. I told them in a hotel, but I stayed at my sister's, and she built me like a writing retreat room. And I took a week and just wrote. She's like, here's a tea kettle, here's snacks, here's unlimited food I'm having delivered into your room that's healthy, that fits all your food rules. Your job is to write. And I was able to put 50,000 words together.
Wow.
Which is the minimum.
7 days.
Yeah, it's
7
the minimum
days.
for my manuscript. I went back and checked my Hay House contract, and it said 50 to 60,000 words. And I was like, okay, I'm going to bust it and just do it. And it was so cool to get to sit there in a place that's not my home, and just get it all out.
Yeah.
I got out my thoughts. I got out all my ideas, everything I've like taught and spoken about for like 10 years on Ayurveda and inflammation and circadian rhythm, all in one place. Mm-hmm. And then it gave me the space to innovate.
Yeah.
So I already came out with, I was like on fire. I was like, I have this new idea around doshas and the science. My sister's like, of course you're going to come up with new things when you've already committed to what the book is supposed to be. But that's what gets me the most excited. When I thought of interviewing you, I was like, she's creating magical moments and experiences for people to unpack and unfold the next chapter of what they're meant to bring in the world. Yeah. And that's to be revered. Like that's so special to be the keeper of creating those safe spaces for that unfoldment, because it's, if you're not going to feel safe and you're not going to feel like you've got all your needs met, you might not be able to. Like if I flew to Barcelona today and was like, I'm going on the Camino, I would still have to worry about every aspect of my trip and my journey and all that. But if I'm in a group with you, then I'm curated into the space of just getting to be, which I think is huge.
I loved when you said you were in a home that wasn't your home, right? And I think it's really important that where our feet are feels like home. Yeah. And I love that you were taken care of, right? Because if you had to worry about getting your food and all of these things, it would take you out of that moment. Right. And so exactly, right, when people arrive, everything's handled. Where we're staying logistically. And there's a lot of logistics because we're staying somewhere different every single night. We're walking our way to that destination. And so the food, the activities, it's like you get to actually just be in the moment. And it takes me back to Africa. This is a core memory, right? I was in Africa. I hiked Kilimanjaro, many core memories doing that. But the moment I remember, there's a picture that someone took, because we didn't take our phones with us either. So someone from the guides or something. And I remember I was wearing a red North Face shirt, and it was just an open field, like an open thing. And we were in these Adirondacks, me and my friend Sam, and there was a fire pit in the middle, and we're sipping tea. And I felt the most free and peaceful I've ever been in my life. There wasn't a worry in the world. I wasn't thinking of anything I had to do at home. I didn't even have my phone with me. So I was like disconnected in that way. But I go back to that so often. And that's that feeling I want people to have at a retreat where you are fully taken care of. We're making the tea, we're making the coffee, we've got the food, we've got the activities laid out. Like you just get to show up. You just get to show up and be yourself. And like you were saying, so many ideas get downloaded when you have that space in your mind. It's just like, we could do this, we could do that. It's like, it's cool. And it's like, have a notepad because all of that stuff's definitely going to come up and out, which is why we want people writing their story during that time, because it'll be the most true to who they really are.
Sure. It'll be their most pure, unadulterated self.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. I didn't think of that. Like that's such a powerful thought. When I plan trips, I'm the adult. I plan them for the elders. I plan them for the youngers. And when you're the planner, it's actually hard usually to be in the moment because you're in charge of all logistics. And so everyone's asking you questions. So sometimes when I plan family trips, like I planned a ski trip for the family a couple of years ago, I said, I have a 30-page Google Doc. We will have team meetings to review beforehand. And I said that because I said, I want to enjoy the trip. Yeah. So I'm just going to let you know everything has been booked. Everything's been handled. This is the plan. But don't ask me every 5 minutes what we're going to be doing.
Check the Google Doc. Yeah.
So I was like, it's all executed. Every detail's handled. Just it's here. But I think that's so cool because as an adult and as a parent, I rarely get to go on a trip and just enjoy. When I go with my sister, I get to because she is like you. She's like the most epic travel planner. She'll build the itinerary and I'm just there for the fun.
Yeah.
So that's what it sounds like to me is like you are that big sister who's like done all the work. In this case, she's my little sister, but you're the big sis who's like done all the work, planned the thing, and we get to just show up and lovingly enjoy the thing.
Yeah. What came through in that is a couple different things. I had a meditation once where I was like, you're not able to enjoy anymore because you keep getting lost in the logistics, right? So people aren't able to have fun if they're lost in the logistics. So really releasing responsibility, because think about how much responsibility we have every single day for all the things that you mentioned, right? And it's like, if we can just show up somewhere and release responsibility, we can actually be our real authentic self. I think that's so cool to not be lost in logistics and actually be able to have fun. I think that that's what people are craving more than anything in life is fun, and they don't know how to have it because they have too much on their mind. True.
And coming out of pandemic, it's like there's so much, I think of it as dysbiotic dysregulation, but we are dysregulated. We are dysbiotic. We had a lot of stress on us. And so like, where can you just show up in the world and just put that luggage down and let it go and just be and just enjoy and be free? Like, how do we return to ourselves in that way as well?
We even have people that are transporting the luggage from place to place. So it's like, truly you get to put down your luggage and we're going to transport it for you. You don't even have to take it. Yeah.
Nice. That's huge. I was thinking, I was like, people need to walk in advance of this thing. So they're like ready to walk that distance, like be ready with your orthotics and your best new shoes. And they have to be broken in. Like my mind was a little bit like, would I sign up for this? I think I would, because in my case, it's a little bit of a challenge. Like I wouldn't assume that I could walk 8 to 12 miles a day. I know I can walk 3 or 5 miles, but 8 to 12 is like a push. Yeah. And then you're aligning people to their circadian rhythm. You're putting them in nature, which is so powerfully healing. It's a spiritual path and spiritual journey. And again, everything we already spoke about, which is just put down life and allow all the things that you want to surface and download come to you. Yeah. It's just so beautiful.
And I think that people think that too, like 8 to 12 miles. And it's over the whole course of the day. So we're having breakfast, we're walking a little bit, we're having lunch, we're stopping and we're getting into the river or the hot springs, and then we're walking, right? So it's very broken up all throughout the day. So it won't feel like that. Plus you're in a new environment and you're seeing this new culture, you're immersed in it. So the time will go so fast. Sure. And people really don't have to prep and plan so much for the 5 days. If you were doing the 6 weeks of walking, yes, and you would want to get the best shoes and all of that. Jess actually, when she did it the first time, her mom called. Her mom was supposed to do it with her dad, but he hurt his ankle. Mm-hmm. So she called Jess and said, hey, do you want to walk the Camino in 2 weeks? And Jess was like, give me 24 hours to think about it. And her mom said, you have 1 hour to decide. And so she said yes. And she had her yoga pants and her just regular tennis shoes and whatever, and no walking sticks or anything. And she did it. And she's like, it was actually fine because it was so broken up and they didn't have to carry their luggage, because that's the stuff. If you're carrying a bunch of extra weight, yes, that can get a little bit tough. But I always say that too about Kilimanjaro. I've done hikes, Mount Whitney or Yosemite or something, that were harder than Kilimanjaro because I had to carry all of the weight. But Kilimanjaro, we had guides that were carrying our stuff. So I thought, wow, this is nice. We're just walking along.
Sure. Will you share the Kilimanjaro story? Because that's unique. Not everyone in the world has hiked Kilimanjaro.
Yeah, really a lot of this stuff being unplugged and stuff came from an experience where I lived in a cave for 60 days with no outlets, right? So it was all about the outlook in life and we really couldn't plug into anything. So after that, I thought, what are some things that we can do, big adventures unplugged and not take our phones? And so actually one of the girls who was in the cave with me, Sam, she hiked Kilimanjaro with me. And that was one of the most transformational experiences of my life. I'd probably put it in top 3 of my whole entire life of anything I've ever done. And there were so many aspects to that. One, didn't even bring my phone with me to the country, like left it at home. So like one of us had a phone if we needed for emergency. But 2, being out there, again, perspective, seeing how other people live. We went into the villages because part of our money got donated to charity. So we got to go to the villages and see where that was going and play with the kids and have conversations. They were the happiest kids I've ever met in my life with the biggest smiles on their face. They have no idea. They're like, we have everything we need. We have our family, right? This love. And then being on the hike. And some of the days were like a walk in the park. And then the last day, the summit. So you already hiked that day. Then you go to sleep at like 7 p.m. and get up at 10 p.m. So like 3 hours later and start hiking to the summit. And that goes until 6 a.m. When the sun is rising and you get up there, but there's not a lot of oxygen. So there's each step, you're like, I might be dying. Like this might be it. And you can't, if you sit down, it's kind of like what happens on Everest. Like you don't want to sit down and like stay down for too long. So you're got to keep moving, which life lessons right there too. 1 foot in front of the other. I just kept saying 1 foot in front of the other. Just take one more step. You can do one more step, one more, right? And that's how I got to the top. And it was so like to overcome something like that where I physically thought I can't go anymore, but I did. Right. And I think that probably helped me the most in business, overcoming that, working through something that was physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually challenging and realizing that I could survive, I could live through it and getting to the top and accomplishing something like that I had set out, a seed was planted. I said, yes, I committed to it. Everything that could go wrong or show up before that was happening to where I should have canceled, but I didn't because I committed and showed up. And then, my life was forever changed. It was so beautiful. So many life lessons. Again, I was away from everything. So every answer to any question I ever had was revealed in that time. And it was just incredible.
It sounds so cool. It sounds like such a big act of bravery to like commit to that and go do that,
Yeah. I feel it in my body right now of like, as if I didn't do it and I'm thinking about doing it again. I actually would like to take a group there as a retreat too.
Cool.
Yeah. So that might be on the horizon in the next year or so.
How long does it take to train for and do the Kilimanjaro?
So kind of similar to the Camino. I didn't train for it. I didn't prepare for it. I did 2 hikes. I did Mount Whitney and Half Dome. So in the same exact month, Half Dome, Whitney, and Kilimanjaro all happened. Wow. So wild. Whitney is about 14,500. Half Dome was a little less than that. So really what I was just trying to see is altitude wise, if I would get sick. But the cool thing is you really acclimate on Kilimanjaro. There's a lot of switchbacks and weaving and going up and down and things like that so that you can acclimate over that course of that 7 days. Mm-hmm. So really it's like, number one, if you're going to get altitude sickness, you are like, you can't prevent that. There's nothing to train for that. There is no way of like going to spend time in it. Like you either are somebody who gets that or you don't. And then the rest of it is just like really being able to walk at just a normal pace and eventually get there. Some people get there really quick. Some people, it takes a long time and you stop and have lunch as well along the way. So it's something more that you mentally prepare for versus the physical aspect.
Got it. It sounds like something cool to do in this lifetime. As an entrepreneur, I was recently sharing with someone that being an entrepreneur is like this really long road journey where you have a dream and you just assume that since you're smart and hardworking and have good intentions, it'll happen in a year. And it's this arduous road. And for some, it must happen fast and quick. And for some of us, it takes time. And as an entrepreneur, I have to just hang in. And so that's been the challenge, is to not quit year after year when I get burnt out and tired of the whole thing. And one year I did something called a year of yes, where
I love that.
Everything that scared the bejesus out of me, I said yes to. And I would purposely create those experiences. So like we'd go somewhere and I'd be like, yes, I'll pet the stingray. Yes, I'll swim with the dolphin. Yes, I'll go jetpacking over the ocean, even though I was scared of the ocean at the time. Now I'm not. I was scared of deep water. So like anything I was scared of, I was like, yes, let's go. And it really retrained my brain as an entrepreneur, because now I'm like, yes, you're saying we should go do that weird, crazy idea? Sure, let's try it. And so just you talking about Kilimanjaro, I was like, 7 days? I think I could do that. It's just a
totally do it.
You're not like climbing with your bare hands with like hooks up the side of a mountain. That's kind of cool then. It's not, it's not beyond what's possible.
Totally. So and what's cool too is
at your next epic retreat.
I know. Yeah. What's cool is you get to go through like 7 different time or climate zones too. Like you start and it's in a rainforest, and then you come out and it's a desert, and then you go and it's ice and snow. And there's all these different, it's so incredible that over a couple of days you can experience all of that.
Nice.
So beautiful.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a pleasure getting to know you, Lauren. It's been a pleasure talking to you. I'm so glad we met and our paths crossed. And I'm so glad that you've created these experiences for people where they get to just unwind, unpack, download, tune in, heal, process, move step by step through whatever transition points or special moments they're going through in their lives. This sounds like a beautiful mommy-daughter or sister trip, just to go and have this experience together. And I just love that you create these wellness retreats that are so healing. I love bringing these ideas into the podcast so that people can just be open and to hear about the different ways that we can support ourselves, that this is healing, this is health. To get to do what you're talking about is such a treat and such a special way to support, like you said, quantum leaps in our evolution and in our healing and in our way of being.
I love that. And I feel like at the end of the day, it's about choosing ourselves, prioritizing self-care, prioritizing the things that are going to energize us and bring us joy and help us feel more alive for those people around us, right? We fill up with the good stuff, so we pour all that good stuff out onto those people that we come in contact with and the people that we love.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast today. Will you share where people can find you and how they can get a hold of you? And I know you have a coffee site. We didn't even get to share about that. So if you'll share about that a little and then share where they can find you.
Yes, absolutely. So my website for all things is Lolly Coffee, LALEIGH, like Raleigh with the L, lollycoffee.com. So we have the retreats that we have coming up on there. I also do retreat coaching. So I help people plan, price, promote, and sell out their transformational retreat experiences. And then, as you just mentioned, we have coffee on there as well. And I started that company in honor of my grandfather, who I did mention on here, the reason I'm walking the way and I'm taking his ashes. But as he was passing from Parkinson's, I decided I wanted more of a legacy company, something that would honor him. So it's called Lolly, because Lauren and Raleigh put together is Lolly. And our first roast is the Raleigh roast. And we donate to Parkinson's Foundation.
Beautiful. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I appreciate you. And I'm so excited to hear what comes of this beautiful retreat that you're hosting later this year. And thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Have a beautiful day.
Thank you. Thanks for joining me for this episode. Check out our sponsor, Fusionary Formulas, the potent turmeric supplement used by doctors around the U.S. for patients with pain and inflammation. www.fusionaryformulas.com. I'm your host, Dr. Shivani Gupta. For more, visit shivanigupta.com.
Subscribe to this podcast in Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Click the follow button or subscribe in any of the apps that you use. That's all I've got for you on the Fusionary Health podcast this week. You have the power to transform your health and achieve vibrant health starting today.